So currently I'm unemployed and I'm a film student at a university. So instead of using my time wisely, doing projects, put into my resume and whatnot, I decided let's watch all of the Best Picture winners from the Academy Awards. All the way from 1928 to 2025, 98 films. However, I thought it'd be a little funny to put 99 films into my little list. I thought it'd be funny to kind of rank these films based on my favorite dog shit movie, Moonfall, which came out 2022, and ranked it based on if I thought the movie was more enjoyable, less enjoyable than this film.
Hey guys, come on. How did you get out?
I thought it'd be funny, maybe it would irritate some people, so I thought let's add it on. So here are the 99 film list, ranking all of the Best Picture winners from worst to best. Let's get started. And also, I'm going to be spoiling these movies. I'll try to give warnings, but I feel like I'm not going to remember that. Hi, editing page here. So, forgot to mention this in the video, but I'm only ranking these films just on my opinion. I'm not doing like a point system. I'm not doing any logistics. So, if you disagree with the ranking, that's totally fine. Just know that it's just how I feel, okay? That's all. Bye. Dead last, number 99. And I hope I never get to talk about this film ever again. My partner has heard so much about it. He's sitting right over here. And I hope this is the last time I'll ever talk about it. 1963's Tom Jones. Stinker. That was a stinker. So the premise of the film is about a man named Tom Jones who, let's just say, likes to get around, likes to do whatever he wants, no consequences whatsoever, for about 2 hours. That's the film. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Yeah, it really just irritated me. It took me 3 days to watch this film. And I also had to watch this film while I was going through a rough period during the summer. So, yeah, dead last. At number 98, we have 2005's Crash. This movie is as bad as people say it is, if not worse. All I heard was the bad stuff about it. I didn't know anything about the film. Brother, it was worse. It was way worse than I would have expected. Another film where I'm just like, how do I describe the premise? All of these A-list celebrities, by the way, all the way from Sandra Bullock to Ludacris, going through parts of their lives that involve race in some aspect, which sounds like a good concept of a film. Not this one. Somehow, Ludacris was the worst character in the film. Every scene he was in, it was like, see? Racism. Basically, the whole movie is just microaggression movie. It's the best way I can describe it. Yeah, terrible scenes, terrible acting, given all the list of celebrities in there. I laughed when it should have been serious. I couldn't take the movie seriously. That's all. Bad movie. At number 97, another film that I would not stop talking about during this whole process is 1928's Broadway Melody. Stinker. Another stinker. So this film is about two sisters who are trying to make it big in Broadway, and the younger sister magically becomes hotter overnight as she grows up, and now everybody is pushing the other sister aside and making her the star throughout all the productions. And somehow the older sister, her man, flirts with the younger sister throughout the whole film, and they get married at the end, and the older sister's just okay with it. Next movie. I'm done. At number 96, we have 1958's Gigi, which was... This was another film that I could not tell you the premise of. It's about this girl named Gigi who is in the high society, but she doesn't want to be. She's not that girl. But befriends this other high society man who's like the biggest bachelor. and they become platonic throughout the course of the film just for them to fall in love with each other. I think she's a kid though. From how from the beginning scene alone, this old man just starts singing about little girls and how they're the greatest thing.
Thank heaven for little girls. They grow up in the most delightful way.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
At number 95, we have 1933's Cavalcade. The beginning of the film starts in 1900 with this family in the UK just going through the First World War. It's one of those movies where things just happen and there's no rhythm to it, there's no flow, there's no like character development. Things just happen and then it ends. That's the issue that I have with a lot of these older films is that things just happen. That's it. Now, speaking of a film that things just happen, but nothing happens at the same time, we have 2020's Nomadland. I think I felt more irritated once the film was done because I actually did research on this film. Because at first it felt like a documentary on a bunch of civilians who were in this area and they had to relocate. So, hence the name Nomadland. They had become nomads. And here's Frances McDormand surrounded by actual people. By the way, I looked this up. They're not actors. So, are we glorifying this? Are we exploiting poor people now? Is that the thing? I don't get it. I think this would have worked if it was a documentary and no A-list actors in it. That's just my thing. Yeah, the whole movie's just Frances McDormand doing a thing, reflecting, and then doing a thing and then reflecting, and it's just that for an hour 45 minutes. So I was bored. At number 93, we have The Greatest Show on Earth from 1952. Spoiler alert, this was not the greatest show on earth. This was actually boring and excruciatingly painful to watch. The only real actors in this film that I could at least recognize was Charlton Heston, and Jimmy Stewart, who actually plays the clown in the movie. The film, boring, but I will say the third act definitely takes a different turn, involving Jimmy Stewart's character as a clown. So basically, Jimmy Stewart's character is a runaway murderer. Like we go that route at the third act. Just kind of does a 180, and I think that was the only interesting part of the film that actually kept me interested. And that was maybe 20 minutes. Everything else was boring. I also am not really a fan of circus films. At number 92, we have 1932's Grand Hotel. So this film was filled with A-list actors during that time. You had Joan Crawford, you had Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore, and yet nothing happens. Besides maybe some thievery. That's it. That's it. And that's all I'll say. Because it was just a movie about nothing. So I've got nothing to say about it. At 91, we have 1951's An American in Paris. I thought this film was very gorgeous looking. The choreography was killer. You have Gene Kelly, who is an amazing dancer. And he's a good actor, but I don't think this film was that great for him. And also the same actress who played Gigi is in this film. So she's got two stinkers for me. Basically, she's already engaged to be married to this man who's actually his friend, but still decides to fool around with him. And things just kind of work out in the end. No consequences. That's it. At number 90, we have 1937's The Life of Emile Zola. This movie was okay. The first half was very boring. It was about his life, hence the title. But then we get to the point where a man is wrongfully accused of being a spy, and Emile takes the opportunity to go to court for him and speak for his case. I thought that scene was very great for him. That was the only thing that really kept me engaged. Everything else was just, like I've said, older movies, just things happen and nothing happens at the same time. At number 89, we have 1931's Cimarron. I never know how to pronounce it correctly. But Cimarron is about in the late 1800s when people were starting to relocate in the Oklahoma area, basically taking away the land from Native Americans. But also, this story kind of took that, but wanted to merge with the Native Americans during the time. So it was progressive for the time, being at 1931, but at the same time was not progressive. You had a lot of racial scenes, especially with his servant who was a little black boy. Like the racism was very, very apparent. And also the story was just boring. I thought the main character, he had some great scenes. Like he gave 110%, but at the same time, it was just the story just wasn't working. At number 88, we have 1956, Around the World in 80 Days. I've never seen the remake. I only knew that they were in a hot air balloon. That's about it. Although they go to a lot of places, it was a whole lot of nothing. I thought the main character was very flat. He had no personality to him, but we had to root for him. I thought his sidekick was pretty funny, but then at times, like, still some racial scenes with him since he was a Hispanic man. I thought the movie was very colorful. The set design had to be crazy. The budget had to be crazy. At number 87, we have 1936's The Great Ziegfeld. So this was about a producer in the 1910s, 1920s, but he wanted to put on multiple shows with like extravagance and like the bigger the better in all aspects. And I thought that was the great part of the movie, were the costumes, the actual performances on the stage. And then you get to the actor that played Scarecrow wearing blackface. At number 86, we have 1987's The Last Emperor. We actually watched it before I decided to do this. We watched like the first 20 minutes and we shut it off. And I should have listened. I think this movie would have been great if it was in their native language, and also the the very obvious voiceovers for the children, just bad. It took me out of the movie. Again, this was like a movie that probably had a big budget. The sets were crazy, the outfits were crazy. Shoot, Peter O'Toole's in this movie. I felt uncomfortable multiple times, but again, the story just wasn't working for me. At number 85, we have 1989's Driving Miss Daisy. This movie was just a big eye roll to me. I love Morgan Freeman, and he was about the only good thing about this movie. Like, it was cute. Like, their bond was cute, you know, it was strictly, I mean, I'm a sucker for, you know, opposite sex being besties. I feel like not a lot of movies are like that, but I think it worked in this sense, but at the same time, yeah, she just was not a good person. At number 84, we have 1985's Out of Africa, starring Meryl Streep and Robert Redford. I had a farm in Africa was said multiple times in this film. It's been engraved in my brain. Also, Meryl Streep's accent in this film, I can't even remember what accent she was going for, but whatever it was, it doesn't exist. I will say their chemistry was good, but at the same time, she was a married woman. It was weird. I don't know. Like, it wasn't exactly an open marriage, but like, she was married. So what are you doing? This also was a film that was, once it wrapped up, I just felt confused and nothing really resolved in the end. Again, things just happen and okay, we're done. That's it. At number 83, we have 1953's From Here to Eternity, which actually has Frank Sinatra, who I think was the highlight of the film. I thought the film itself was just basic. It was pretty boring, which involves soldiers during well, actually, this was before World War II, spoiler alert, being stationed in an area in Hawaii. Kind of know where this is going. One of the other characters is fooling around with the chief's wife, too. But yeah, other than that, like, just a bunch of nothing. But I will say the last 10 minutes, which will be the spoiler, Pearl Harbor happened there. Like, the last scene in the film is Pearl Harbor. And that's where I, like, sat up and was like, oh, okay. Like, it felt unexpected, even though I should have saw it coming, hence the setting and what time it was. Now, Number 82 is 1998's Shakespeare in Love. You, Weinstein. You. This was the year when Saving Private Ryan was also nominated for that. They deserved it 100%. And also, I didn't think anyone that won an award for this movie deserved it. There, I said it. Even Judi Dench won Best Supporting Actress, which, okay, fine. Her role was not important to the film, so it was crazy that she won Best Supporting Actress, and I think that's because of Weinstein. Also, this film, Shakespeare literally gets outed as a married man while they're fooling around, and he'll just go and just write about his death for Romeo and Juliet instead of, being responsible and accountable, but what can you do? At number 81, we have 1941's How Green Was My Valley. This film, another one of the old ones where things just kind of happen and then it ends. I do think the story was great. I just wish that it cared more about the story and the characters. It was like they were almost there and then it ends. So also, it might have just been the version that I was watching, but the Foley sounded like they did this like this year. So it was really weird. I don't know. It could have just been the version, but do I think it's a bad movie? No. I probably would watch it again, but I think the story would have just been better. That's all. At number 80, we have 1990's Dances with Wolves with Kevin Costner, directed by Kevin Costner. And you can tell. I will say not in a good way. So he's narrating throughout the film as well as he's starring in it. And yet he sounds like he's literally reading it right off of the paper. Like he's never practiced the words. Like he's almost talking like this. And then this happens. Like, do better. Just one last thing I'll say about this film is that I just didn't really care for the main character. I did cry at one point, and it was only because they animals in there, and that was the only thing. And I'm not a fan of it, but I knew it meant something in the story, but yeah, I didn't love that. At number 79, we have 2021's CODA, which actually stands for Child of Deaf Adults. The story was cute. I thought the movie was fine, but it was just very basic. It was like your typical late 2010s teeny bopper movie. Almost like Love, Simon, like those kind of things where the teenager wants to do something different, but has to struggle between being with family or caring for themselves, which is like a solid story. I just feel like I've seen it way too many times at this point. I think this story in general, being a child with deaf parents is a story that needs to be told. I just wish it would have been done differently in a way, to be more impactful. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a bad film, just too basic, in my opinion. Now, the film bros are gonna hate me for this one. But at number 78, we have 1971's The French Connection. There was no connection with me in this film. I thought some of the scenes were great. The action shots were great. I thought the chase scene in the car, under the railroad was great. I thought it was the best scene in the film. The movie just suddenly just ends with nothing really being resolved. I could not tell you what the actual French Connection was, in my opinion. You probably could, but no, you couldn't either. We watched it together and we both just kind of looked at each other. Yeah, so it was a skip for me. Sorry, film bros. At number 77, we have 1948's Hamlet. This film was directed by Laurence Olivier and was starred in the film as well. Now, compared to Dances with Wolves, this was one where directed and starred, like, this made sense, in my opinion. He's, like, the best person to do a Shakespeare film. The only issue was, I know the story, but that's only because I had to look it up as I was watching the film. I just couldn't get into it. I thought the scenes were well acted, and I've read Shakespeare. I just haven't read Hamlet, so that could have been my issue, but I had to spark notes the movie. Number 76, we have 1973's The Sting. Computer, Make Robert Redford and Paul Newman, they kept eye each other the entire film, and I was just like, when? But no, obviously their chemistry was great. I thought their characters really worked well together. The story itself, I just didn't care for. I don't know. It just didn't really work for me, to be honest. But I thought everyone did great, though. And I thought the scene with Paul Newman pretending to be drunk while playing poker with the villain was very funny. Number 75, we have 1996, The English Patient, which stars Ray Fiennes. And it's basically him just ruining everybody's lives in this film. I have the book, and I didn't really know the controversy until I was watching the movie, which actually does play a role in the film towards the latter end. I don't know how accurate that is, though. Cheaters never prosper. Yeah, I'm just not really a fan of where a lot of these films like glorifying cheating on your partner or glorifying being a homewrecker. I don't know. That's basically what this film is. I will say the caretaker and her love story was probably the best part of the film. And I thought with their scenes was the only like impactful part and made sense. Number 74, we have 1981's Chariots of Fire. So if you know the scene, because I couldn't find a clip of it to put in this video, but you know the scene of all the men running along the beach and the da, 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 da. That's this movie. And that's the only part of the film that I remember. I mean, it's about two men who, you know, just want to be on top in track and field, and that's about it for the entire film. They just go about their lives, but also wanting to win at the end of the day. Yeah, even the third act of them actually being in the Olympics was very underwhelming, and I was expecting more from it, and then the movie ends. At number 73, we have 1944's Going My Way, starring Bing Crosby. And like all of Bing Crosby's films, it's just him wanting to sing, which isn't bad. I think he's a great singer. But he plays a priest going into this new church that he's going to take over, and kind of that dynamic with the current priest and how they kind of butt heads a little bit. For a religious film, it didn't really feel too preachy, which I could appreciate. However, they did kind of stereotypically made atheists angry and stupid. But for the time, like, whatever, I get it. At number 72, we have 2018's Green Book, which stars Mahershala Ali. It's crazy how he went from Moonlight to Green Book within a couple years. This one just didn't. It's like Driving Miss Daisy, but slightly better. But mainly it's about this guy who is looking for a job and ends up being a personal assistant and driver to Mahershala Ali's character, who is a virtuoso. But also it's during the time when segregation is still pretty prominent during that time and how their dynamics work together. It's not that it was a bad film, but all I'm gonna say is I did read up, someone said that the family from Get Out would highly enjoy this film, and I think that's all I have to say about that. At number 71, we have 1949's All the King's Men. I thought this movie was enjoyable, but looking back at it, I really only remember the main character of Lily Stark, who is this up-and-coming politician who sees corruption and wants to, you know, be that kind of... it kind of gave off socialism during that time, but how that power corruption got into his brain and how it just went downhill from there, which is a solid story. It was just pretty predictable. But for the time, it probably would have been fantastic. It's just something that I've seen before. At number 70, we have 1966, A Man for All Seasons, which follows the story of Sir Thomas More during reign of Henry VIII. It's about how Henry VIII wants to divorce his current wife and how Sir Thomas More will not allow that to happen, and how that power dynamic of the king basically ruining his life because of this decision. I will say it was very boring up until the third act. I was very locked in. I won't spoil it, but like the court scene was very well written, very emotional. It actually kind of wrapped up very nicely, but I think because I just lost interest from the get-go, that's how it lands on this number. At number 69, we have 2012's Argo, starring Ben Affleck. I almost said Ben Stiller. So this film, The story was very fun. It's about how during the 1970s, how the US embassy in Iran suddenly was overpowered by the Iranian government, and the 5 or 6 Americans who had to escape and find solitude. So Ben Affleck's character comes in by creating this fake film and setting this plan to go to Iran for this film just to get them back, and how it all turns out. Again, the premise is really fun. And it wasn't that it was boring, but there were times where it was very pro Hollywood at the time, and I could see why this film won Best Picture. That's why it's down here. Also the ending was very anticlimactic. They tried to up the tensity on the scenes, and it just wasn't really working for me. And number 68, we have 1977's Annie Hall, starring Woody Allen, which is why it is down this low. I don't understand people when they're like, oh, we have to separate the art from the artist. How am I supposed to enjoy this film when Woody Allen's face is staring at me for a whole hour and a half? But it's not dead last, because I will say Diane Keaton carries this film. And also, I hate to say it, but it was very funny at times. And breaking the fourth wall, those moments where it didn't feel like a eye roll, but it actually was pretty funny. But basically, the story is just about Woody Allen's character, his relationship with Annie Hall, and how he lost it. I thought the story was cute, but again, it's Woody Allen, and I can't let that happen. So at number 67, we have 1954's On the Waterfront, starring Marlon Brando. This film, I had the misfortune of researching it before I actually watched it. So I did have that bias kind of watching this film and why it's so low compared to how other people see this film. The story is good, but knowing the backstory and the controversy behind it. So it's written and directed by a man who was a government snitch during the Red Scare, and basically made this film as a, oh, don't look at me, guys, like, I'm doing the right thing. And basically, Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible about this man, so I had to side with Arthur Miller on that one. And number 66, we have 1992's Unforgiven, which stars Clint Eastwood and is also directed by him. Forgive me for saying this, but Clint Eastwood films are just not my thing. He plays the same character in every role he's in, where it's like, I don't do that anymore, but this is my last mission. It's very much this. But this movie is a Western, which personally I'm not a big fan of that genre. But even just the story just seemed too basic to me, where it was this past cowboy who murdered a bunch of people back in his prime and doesn't do that anymore. And when a younger cowboy, approaches him being like, we gotta do this. So, you know how that story is. Also, I've come to learn that every movie that Gene Hackman is in, I'm not a fan of either. And to me, he just has that instant, like, villain. Like, the minute I saw him, I'm like, there's a villain. Like, the acting is fine, but yeah, I wasn't interested in it. So, number 65. I know there's 98 films that won the Academy Award, but I added 99 because this is how I wanted to rank all the films in this list based on my favorite horrible movie, Moonfall, which sits at 65. This movie, I've seen this one probably like 3 or 4 times at this point, and I have cried, I've laughed, I've choked up, I've vomited, I've pissed myself. Literally, I think so. Like, it's the worst written film ever, and it's just so it's so funny in the wrong ways because it's not written like a comedy. But I wanted to add it to this list to show, oh my god. So I wanted to add this film to the list to show enjoyability amongst this list, and all the films that I had just talked about prior to this. I would rather watch Moonfall.
Oh, shit.
So Moonfall is in a Clint Eastwood sandwich because number 64 is 2004's $1 Million Baby. I thought I was going to enjoy this film. I'm always a sucker for a woman wanting to better herself, and show it to the other guys, but this one it just kind of, again, directed by Clint Eastwood and also stars him as well. Also takes that route of I don't teach girls. I don't do that. And then does it like it's like a Rocky Light is what I like to call it. But doesn't really end in a positive note. I will say that. I will give for it not going that Rocky route. But yeah, I just think this story was not convincing to me. I did love her character, but at the same time, like nothing really screamed what motivated her to doing all of this. She just kind of shows up. So that's kind of my reasoning on why it's at number 64. At number 63, we have 2009's The Hurt Locker. This one's a 50-50 for me on would watch again. I feel like there were scenes that brought the tensity up tremendously and actually paid off really well. Like even I was kind of like, what's gonna happen? But I thought the main character played by Jeremy Renner was just so unlikable. But I think that was his purpose. Like he was trying to be this baddie, this bad guy who like does whatever he wants, but it gets annoying after a while and how his consequences don't actually do anything. Like he just succeeds at the end of the day. So it was just that as well. But again, I think telling the story during this time during the Iraq War was pretty solid for the most part. Yeah, especially with the intensity. Also, I will say the camera work in this was kind of funny because it would just randomly zoom in like a scene from The Office. So it did bring me out of the film multiple times while something's happening, and then it's just a quick zoom in, like you're looking at a camera to the side. So that also didn't really help at all. At number 62, we have 1927's Wings, which is actually the first winner on this list. It would be higher. I thought the film was great for the first film ever to ever win the award, and is also the first silent film. I think the only silent film besides 2011's The Artist, which is on this list as well. This movie had a huge scale for depicting a war film and how the dynamic of the two main characters were really well written. I just did not really vibe with the main character. I thought he was kind of a whiny baby. Also, Clara Bow was in it, and I can see why she was iconic during the 1920s. She definitely carried this film. At 61, we have 1999's American Beauty, starring Kevin Spacey, which is kind of why it's down a little lower. I'm kind of a sucker for like a family that's falling apart, so this movie did interest me in that sense. I did obviously feel uncomfortable knowing that the story is about this man in his like 40s, 50s is falling for his teenage daughter's friend. But also it didn't really glorify, well, it did glorify his point of view on her. That same time, like how his life was falling apart during the entirety of the film and how it comes to his demise in the end. Spoiler. But yeah, everyone in the film kind of has their own little storyline, which I also was very interested in. Like it didn't just focus on his character. At number 60, we have 1968's Oliver. I love this story. I've seen three different variations of this film. I will say this one was great. It's just the musical numbers, which I love musicals, but the musical numbers in this film dragged on for way too long. If anything, didn't need to be there just so that the story could be, because they didn't really add on to the story, if that made sense. The story is about an orphan boy named Oliver Twist who escapes the orphanage and finds himself amongst a group of thieves and joining their group essentially, and how his actions kind of lead to where he ends up and who he can trust throughout the film, which I thought was really interesting. It's a solid film. It just really dragged on for way too long because of the musical numbers. At number 59, we have 1955's Marty. This one was very cute. It was also, at least when I was watching it, it felt like a short film where it follows a guy named Marty who, according to the movie, is an ugly duckling who everyone in his family is getting married, his loved ones are getting married, but he finds himself being trapped amongst these strangers being like, "Why aren't you getting married yet?" So he goes to a dance and he meets this woman who is also considered an ugly duckling. I have to say that because neither of them were ugly. So it was kind of rude, but kind of their love story and how these two ugly ducklings find each other. But it just abruptly ends. Like, it felt like more could have been done about it. That's why it's kind of low on this list. But I thought the film overall was really cute and would watch again. At number 58, we have 1964's My Fair Lady starring Audrey Hepburn. I actually had a huge obsession over Audrey Hepburn when I was a teenager, which, like, honestly is probably the best obsession you can have when you're a teen. So I'll take that. But I adored her in this film. It's one of like the different roles that she's ever done. Yeah, the musical numbers, didn't really care for it. I love the movie as it is, and like some of the musical numbers make sense. Some of them just you could get rid of them. Why it's also just kind of low is because their chemistry didn't really get to me. Like even towards the end where they do get together, it was just like, really? Would have been better if you just did it. So those are my feelings on it. I love Audrey. She kills it in this movie. At number 57, we have 1947's Gentleman's Agreement, which stars Gregory Peck. This film was, I think the premise was really good. So it's about him wanting to write a story about the prejudice against Jewish people, but he felt that he couldn't really approach Jewish people and asking them straight up like, "Hey, how do you feel about being prejudiced against?" But more he took that role in pretending to be Jewish, which on paper sounds fun and exciting, but like at the same time, no. The message really is important. I think for the time it was very important, especially after World War II. Obviously, that's a huge topic. I will say his love interest was a terrible character, terribly written. She is an anti-Semite. I'm just gonna say that. Definitely anti-Semite. And how she has one conversation with a Jewish person and she just flips her script and is like, "You know what, I do love you and I don't care that you're Jewish." So it didn't really work for me. Like, there was another woman in the movie that, like, she was charismatic and I was like, I was rooting for them, but no. At number 56, we have 1934's It Happened One Night, starring Clark Gable. I'm convinced that every movie Clark Gable is in, he has chemistry with everyone, man or woman. It's insane how much charisma this guy has. But this film was another cute one where the story of this woman who is forced to be married to this rich guy because her family's rich, but she wants to break out of it, so she escapes. And then while she's running away, she meets Clark Gable, and then he helps her out, and kind of like a I help you, you help me type situation. And they fall in love. And honestly, their chemistry was great. And there were scenes that made me laugh, especially for a movie in the 30s. I did not know that they had humor like that. But yeah, overall, it was very adorable. Had me smiling. At number 55, we have 1969's Midnight Cowboy, which this one, even to this day, I'm still very unsure about how I felt about this movie. This film is so much different than any other film in this category. Like the editing style is crazy, the cinematography is crazy, the acting, the story is crazy. So that's something that I will give it, is that it is very original. I just think there were unclarities in this film, especially with his backstory, how that kind of fit into his storyline in New York and also his sexuality, like stuff like that. Like they didn't really go in depth with it. Like it was just kind of sprinkled every now and then without it fully being wrapped up in a bow. And also Dustin Hoffman's in it, and every role he's in, I'm hooked. I love him. But yeah, this one I might watch again, but yeah, wasn't really sure about it. At number 54, we have 1935's Mutiny on the Bounty, which stars Clark Gable again, which I will say that for this movie again. He just has chemistry with anybody. This film's based on the novel of the same name, and it's about this group of Englishmen who are on this ship, but also the captain of the ship is very power hungry and very corrupt. So it really is about that dynamic of the workers versus the captain and how Clark Gable kind of helps the workers in taking down this corrupted villain, which I think they had a great the writing was really good for that for that aspect. I thought it was pretty solid for being out in 1935. At number 53, we have 1983's Terms of Endearment, starring Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger, who play a mother and daughter dynamic. And at first, when I was watching the film, I didn't understand why it won, or why it was even nominated in the first place. Like, it just kind of overlooked how their lives were and how close they were throughout the years. And then it hit to the third act, and I was like, okay, I get it now. Which I won't spoil because I think it is a big part of the film. I did like how different the mother and daughter dynamic was for the film. Like, it's not your typical loving mother to a daughter. It felt kind of like best friends, but in a way where like they took that and turned it in a way where like this is how the daughter acts now because of how she was treated and like how she can get away with certain things. It also has Jack Nicholson in the movie, which he's kind of like felt like a random cameo because he didn't really need to be in the main story, but he was a nice addition, is all I'll say. At 52, we have 2011's The Artist, which is the other silent film in this list. At first, like, I thought it was pretty boring, it was pretty basic. Like, it's about this silent actor who isn't getting any gigs with the talkies now coming into Hollywood, and he meets this actress in his early years where she's trying to be an actress, and then she makes it big in the talkies. So it's kind of like him seeing his career kind of falling and how his mental health breaks from it. But I will say the very last scene in the film brought this movie up to me because it was so adorable. I like started to tear up. At number 51, we have 2007's No Country for Old Men. I really wish this movie was higher on this list. I really do. Obviously the best scene in the film is I want you to call it. I quote that all the time, and it's kind of sad that it is the best scene in the film. I will say Javier Bardem is the best part of this film. And I didn't even know that Josh Brolin was in this movie. I didn't really know that Tommy Lee Jones was in this movie. I just like only knew of Javier Bardem. And even after watching, he is the only thing I remember from this film.
Woody Harrelson.
And Woody Harrelson. I love Woody Harrelson. And he has like a small cameo in it, and he's awesome. I love him. But I will say Tommy Lee Jones did not need to be in this movie. Like, you could write his scenes out of it and the film would still run the same way. And come to find out, he was paid a big sum of money compared to the other actors. Like, looking at their budget, and I looking at him like, oh, so was he like contractually part of this film maybe? But I don't know. He didn't need to be in there. He kind of pissed me off. But yeah, I did like how the first half was very a cat and mouse game, and how that all ends towards the end, and how fate and chance plays a big part in this movie. So it wasn't what I was expecting, but pretty solid. At number 50, we have 2013's 12 Years a Slave. So I watched this the year it came out, and I was about 15 years old. I will say it is better the second time. Like, being a 28-year-old now, it was better this time watching it, but I did see kind of the imperfections of this film. This is a story that needed to be told, but I think the writers and the directors took this opportunity to like hone in those Oscar-worthy performances. It was like an Oscar bait type film, and it felt disrespectful for the story that was being told. The film is very effective with controlling the audience's emotions with the film and the scenes, so I will give it that. It was just those parts of the film that just felt disrespectful for the story that was written. At number 49, it is 2017's The Shape of Water. I will say, after I watched this film the first time, I felt unsure about it. Like, it was a great film, but the message behind it didn't really click to me. And then my boyfriend told me her backstory, which I must have missed when I watched it, that they are actually the same species. And I will tell you, that changed the whole projection of this entire film, and it bumped it up tremendously. So thank you for saying that. But it actually makes so much sense now. It's a pretty solid movie. Guillermo del Toro's name is written all over this film, and I'm a big fan of his artwork, his style of writing and directing. And it's crazy because that year was just filled with bangers. I think it was Get Out, Call Me by Your Name, Lady Bird, like all these great films. So yeah, that was a pretty competitive year for that film. At number 48, we have 1961's West Side Story, which I absolutely adore this film. I grew up watching this film with my mom. Sucks the remake really sucked. And I know that's the version that you've seen, and I'm so sorry that you did. But it's great. The color of the film, it's so colorful. Even the dance numbers are just, I can't stop looking at it. Like it's great. The love story is believable, and it really is a Romeo and Juliet set in the time that it was, especially with Hispanic immigrants coming into America, and how that racism in between between the Sharks and the Jets. It's just a very important story. At 47, we have 1940's Rebecca. This film was actually originally much higher, but the more I thought about it, I've seen the movie twice now, and I really thought about it. Like, it does bring the suspense. Hitchcock is really good with intensity in his films, but the more I thought about it, the third act just kind of doesn't, in my case, like, it doesn't fulfill the ending to me, especially when the main character just becomes a side character and you don't really see her that much. The maid kills it in this film. She
is the mother I never had. She is the sister everybody would want. I don't know a better person.
At number 46, we have the most recent winner, One Battle After Another. So this film was really good. Why it's so low is because I predicted the film before it even ended, and I hate when that happens, personally. But I thought the actress that played the daughter killed it, and I love Tiana Taylor as well. Like, she's only in the first, 20-25 minutes, but when she's on that screen, like, she commands that scene, and I love her so much. Did it deserve that win? No, it did not. So maybe that's also why it's a little low, because Sinners deserved every award that it was nominated for. I love that film. So it's a little biased, but whatever. At number 45, we have 1938's You Can't Take It With You. This film was so adorable. I'm a sucker for this type of story. So it's a love story, and the guy's side of the family are these rich elites that deal with estates, and her side of the family, they are just a bunch of wackos, is all I'm gonna say. So it's really about their love story and how their families haven't met. So it's really just their families just coming together throughout the film, and the butting heads of those families kind of go throughout the third act of the film. Yeah, it was just really adorable. It touched me. It really did. At number 44, we have 1930's All Quiet on the Western Front. This film surprised me, and I can see why it's amongst the greatest films of all time, especially for the time that the movie was filmed. I did not expect how great of a story it was going to bring and how relevant it still is today. So how it kind of glorifies the war, but then once you're in the war and once you've seen what they do, how that affects your mental being and your life once you come back to reality. And I think they played that very, very well. So I was just very surprised when I was watching it and was in awe, especially with the war footage that they had in there as well. Basically, I was just impressed. The entire film was very impressive. Now, another war film that I was surprised about, at number 43, we have 1970's Patton. At first, I wasn't really getting it. I wasn't getting into the film, because my mindset was, oh, this is another war film. Not necessarily. It's about Patton. It's about him and how corrupt he is, how psychotic this man is, his actions during the war. This film had me pissed off. It made me laugh at moments, when during the end. Even the scene when he was speaking to the Russian translator to tell the Russian general that he's a bastard. Like, that scene was just so funny, just for him to translate it back.
The general says he thinks that you are a son of a bitch, too.
Okay. I'll drink to that.
Like, it was the minute I got into the fact that it's about this guy just being the worst person, but also being such a badass at the same time. Number 42, we have 2010's The King's Speech, which I know a lot of people are going to be mad at that, because it did beat Black Swan and The Social Network, which I understand. However, when I did watch it, I enjoyed it. I think at the end of the day, this just like brought a story of brotherhood, between Colin Firth and Joffrey Rush, which I love that actor, and how they're kind of dynamic throughout the film. It was just very cute. It stuck the landing. It just worked for me. I don't know. It was a very emotional film. I love the way that the camera style was different, not in typical movies where you have someone on this side and then the next shot you have them on this side. It was just very different. The style was different and the coloring was pretty solid. I thought it was a good film. At 41, we have 1979's Kramer versus Kramer, which stars Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman. It really is just, hence the title, a marriage going into divorce. But I think they played it really well on the struggles of being a single parent during that time, because they do have a son, which makes it even worse for them, trying to juggle life and how she kind of leaves the picture when their son relied on her, and how he has to step back and be that 24/7 parent. But I think they played it really well of the struggles of that. The ending, I'm still unsure about the ending. But other than that, like everything else, like it was very solid and very, very moving. At number 40, we have 1982's Gandhi, which this is the second time I've watched it. I watched it back in high school. So I was like watching it throughout the week. And when I was getting ready to watch this film, I was just like, oh, but it's because when you watch it, piece by piece, you don't really get the full story. But actually sitting down and watching this, I definitely enjoyed it more. I don't think Ben Kingsley should have been Gandhi for obvious reasons, but with what performance he gave, like he took the material and
He might have an Indian.
maybe.
He might be British.
Well, if that's the case, then forget what I said. But yeah, it really is just the story of Gandhi, and I'm sure they've missed pieces of controversial things that he's done throughout his life, obviously, but just his main purpose of removing the British government from India and how he's made an impact on their society. At 39, we have 2024's Anora, which was actually the final film that I watched in this entire list. And I didn't think I was going to like it at first, but I was very surprised by it. I mean, it's about a sex worker and how she gets stuck into this Cinderella story only for it to get taken away, and her dealing with the lies that go into it and how she actually finds out about her husband. It was very sad. Like, I understood exactly like what this character was thinking and giving the entire time. And I don't know, I think I do agree that she won Best Actress. I think it could have gone to Demi Moore or her, but do I think the movie should have won Best Picture? Probably not. Personally, I love The Substance. It's one of my favorites, so I don't know. But I think overall, like, this film was very good. It was very well written and played up the tensity, and also it was very comedic at times. So it knew what it was doing. That's what I felt watching this movie, is that it knew exactly what it was doing and what story it was giving. At number 38, we have 1988's Rain Man, starring Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise. This film, adorable. I love this film. But I think he played it really well because it wasn't like we were making fun of him. If anything, we knew what he was thinking and like where he comes from, his thought process on like the sayings that he says. I also have like 2 people in my family that have autism, and how accurate some of his actions and demeanor is very similar to theirs. So it wasn't like it was making fun of people with autism, but it brought more awareness to it, because even in the film, like this was in the late 80s and people were acting like this is a new thing and like never seen before, but it's very real. But the story is about Tom Cruise his dad passes away and gives his inheritance to his brother, who he's never met. And then it just goes from there, where he meets him and learns more about him. At number 37, we have 1945's The Lost Weekend. This one surprised me. It's crazy because I've never heard of this movie before, never heard of it being referenced ever, but the film was fantastic. So The Lost Weekend was this man who had an opportunity to just have a relaxing weekend with his brother, only to go to the bar, get drunk, and miss out on that weekend. But then it just goes into, oh, this man has a drinking problem. This man is an alcoholic. But they played it in a way like we're in the struggle with him. And I think it was very moving. All the emotions that he felt, all the addictive behaviors that he went through. It was just very shocking coming from a 1940s film. Like, I always just assume that older films just don't get into the taboo subjects. Yeah, it was very good and very well acted for sure. At 36, y'all are gonna hate me for this, but it's 2023's Oppenheimer. So when I first watched it, I was bored to tears, and like the third act was absolutely terrific. So it's kind of like that, would I watch it again? Would I not? But just watching it again, like, was I right? Slightly. I think it took me a while to really get invested in his character. And it was just cameo after cameo, which I feel like is all of Christopher Nolan's movies recently. And it just takes me out of the film, if anything. But I will say that last act is still spectacular, even with the explosion and the aftermath of that, and how he has become death. Like, those are baller, obviously. Like, those are the most talked about scenes in the movie, and yeah, it definitely brought that up. At number 35, we had 2014's Birdman. I was not sure at all what the movie was going to be about. I had seen a couple scenes with the actual Birdman, and I thought it was going to be a superhero film, if I'm being honest. I think someone said it was like Fight Club, but for theater kids. And I think that's the best description of this film. It deals with this actor who was in his prime decades ago, but like wants to continue being in that prime, and how it kind of affects other people around him, his relationships in his family, but also his mental health as well, like, which could be a great representation of like us being in our own heads to the point where we just ruin things. I think it played that very well, and it was actually funny at times, and the characters were awesome. Every single character, their chemistry with one another was great. I had fun with this one. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where from this point on, these are all like bangers to me. These are all bangers. Would watch again. I'd say these are all like 9 out of 10s. Which is crazy because we're at number 34. The first one we're going to talk about is 1957's Bridge on the River Kwai. I did not think I was going to like this film the way that I did. It does take a while to like get into that story, but once you know exactly where it's headed, then it's like fantastic. Like I'd say the last like 45 minutes was amazing, like seeing where these characters are ending up, especially with Obi-Wan. I don't know his actual name. We'll call him Obi-Wan. His character was so well written, and it surprised me seeing a character like that unfold throughout the movie. I don't want to give anything away, but because I think people should watch this film, I'm just gonna say it was very well written, very well directed. It literally we were watching it together, and we were literally screaming at the TV like as things were unfolding. So if you get me to do that to a movie, it's obviously good. At number 33, we have 1984's Amadeus. This movie was just fun front to back, honestly. Like, I was enthralled from the get-go, especially when Amadeus actually isn't the main character in the story. It's about Salieri, who is such an interesting villain. He's like an anti-hero, I guess, because he is a protagonist. But his point of view of how Mozart was this reckless boy, basically, and kind of how his jealousy and frustration with Mozart as well throughout the film, and his actions that lead to Mozart's death. Spoiler. Yeah, I thought it was funny. It was well written. Yeah, it was good. Very good. At number 32, we have 1942's Mrs. Miniver, which this one, like The Lost Weekend, was a film that I had never really heard of. But once I watched it, like, from front to back, I was very locked in. It's about this family in the UK during World War II and how their lives intertwine while the war is occurring. Like her oldest son goes off to war during this as well, and like all of the events. It's one of those films where like things are happening, but at the end it does wrap up. It did go through that route, but ended in a way that some of these films should have been in that case. But I will say the last scene where everyone's in the church and the church was bombed, it was just so sad, so depressing. But it had me like sitting in silence for a good minute or two after. And yeah. At number 31, we have 2001's A Beautiful Mind, which stars Russell Crowe. I had watched it prior, but it stopped right before the actual twist of the film happened. And watching this fully this time around, I did not expect the twist to be the way that it did. And if anything, I love a good twist, especially when it actually changes the story and flips it on its head. I won't go into spoilers about what that twist is. I think it is important, but yeah, from front to back, this is another one where I couldn't keep my eyes off of it. I was very entertained the entire time, and I felt all the emotions that the movie was giving, and I thought everyone did a fantastic job in it. And Ed Harris is in it, and I love him. At number 30, we have 1995's Braveheart, directed by Mel Gibson, and he stars in it. This one, I remember watching it as a kid, but I did not remember how good it was until I watched it again. I thought it was very solid. I mean, obviously, I don't know the true history behind it, so it could be different if I did know. I thought the story of his character and his association with it's always the British being in people's business. That's what this movie is, but how his life is personally affected, not just because of his village, but his personal relationships as well, is affected by the British, and how the Scots, like, want to be independent and away from them, and where that turns out, and the treachery in the story as well. It was well paced. I was enthralled. I watched it while I was on the treadmill, and I hate being on the treadmill. And this movie had me past the point where I needed to stop being on the treadmill, if that helps at all. Like, I just kept walking because I was just so focused on the movie. It was so well written. At number 29, we have 1980's Ordinary People. I kind of grouped this movie with Kramer versus Kramer, and it's crazy because they had won consecutively. This one was directed by Robert Redford, which, crazy, Robert Redford, this is probably your best film on the list, and you directed it, so I'd say that's a plus. But this story is about this family dynamic who deals with the aftermath of the son dying in a tragic accident, and the aftermath of where everyone is at in the family. Like, it's hard to explain because I don't want to give it away, but seeing how a family deals and copes with a death in that sense, and how it affects everybody, like mother to son, mother and father, and I don't know, just so, I feel like I'm saying the same things about these movies, but like, it was just very well written, and I cried, and if I cried, it's a good one. Yeah, I don't have anything to say. It's just, I think it's perfect, in my opinion. At number 28, we have 2000's Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe. This one was just a fun one. Like, I'm a sucker for ancient Rome films, because I'd watched it as a kid as well, but I didn't like get a sense of what the true story was until watching it back again. But basically, the story follows Russell Crowe's character, who has helped the Roman Empire succeed in their battles, and how he is gifted the role of emperor by the emperor himself instead of giving it to his son. And then once he dies, that doesn't happen. But basically, this film is how Russell Crowe's character is casted away in order for Joaquin Phoenix's character to become emperor, and him just coming back and doing what he does best, which is beating people up. At 27, we have 2002 Chicago, which I love this film to death. Why it's not higher on this list, it's just, I think I had to put my personal bias aside, but this one is just so fun to me. Like, all the music numbers are just enthralling. The choreography is just awesome. It's funny because it's about these two women who have murdered their lovers or their husbands, and are now in prison, trying to gain fame to avoid being put to death, and how they kind of are trying to beat one another to that stardom. It's great. I got nothing else to say. I love Chicago. At number 26, we have 1950s All About Eve, starring my favorite diva, Betty Davis. And oh my God, I love her. She is fantastic in this film. So it's about this fan of Betty Davis who is trying to work her way up into stardom. And at first you think, oh, she's just a big fan of Betty Davis's character, but really she's trying to bring her down and take her spot. And the sneakiness throughout the film and how frustrated Betty Davis's character gets throughout the film too. Like, I just love her so much. But the scene of her on the stairs being like,
fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
She ends up getting her own fan, and it just becomes this cycle, and I thought it was very well written and so funny. At number 25, we have 2008 Slumdog Millionaire. I had a feeling I was going to love this one, and I thought I had known what the story was going to be, but I also loved how it intertwined with his life throughout these questions and how they related to him, and how the showrunners instantly thought this guy was cheating. It was just a movie full of luck, basically. But I thought it was really fun and entertaining, well directed, well acted. Yeah, it was just, I love the fast pacedness of this film. It kept me engaged throughout. At 24, we have 1960s The Apartment. I didn't know much about this film going into it, and my God, this was fantastic, especially for the time that it came out. It's another one of those taboo films. This one was very interesting because it follows this man who offers his apartment to his coworkers to sleep around, maybe with another coworker or their mistresses, and how it affects his life, but it also focuses on Shirley MacLaine's character as well, who is, spoiler alert, fooling around with her boss, who is a married man, and like it deals with like possible attempts. But yeah, again, just given the time that it was made, like I'm a sucker for films that just kind of go against the norm and overstep boundaries with it. Like, I just think the story is just so original. At number 23, we have 1986 Platoon. I was kind of at that point where war films were just so exhausting. There's so many war films in this list. This one, I will say, I do enjoy watching Vietnam War films, because a lot of the times they are in the war, but then realize, what are we even doing here? And I think that movie does fill that purpose of all this death, all this barbaricness that we're doing to each other. For what purpose? Because of the government. And I think everyone in this film did a fantastic job in how there was this corruptness within their group itself. And I think it really intertwined pretty well with the war story itself. At number 22, we have 1967's In the Heat of the Night. This one was also one that shocked me. I didn't know anything about it, but I love a good crime film. But when you add into the fact of this black man going into a small town, then it takes a different turn. I thought it was brilliant. I thought the chemistry between the two main characters were awesome as well. And again, this was like a film where it came out in the perfect time, because this would have been post-civil rights movement. It's always interesting to see when certain movies come out in a timeline that is relevant to the time. At number 21, we have 1997's Titanic, which, I mean, it's Titanic. I don't think anyone has ever said Titanic's a bad movie. If they are, they've either never seen it or they're lonely. I don't know. But, I mean, what is there to say about Titanic that no one else has ever said? So I'm just going to say that and move on. At number 20, we have 2015's Spotlight, which this one really surprised me the most out of all these films, because I had known this film had won during that year, and I just didn't care to find out anything about this film. But when I watched it, it was like shockingly good. So it's about this group of journalists who work for a newspaper company. I can't think off the top of my head, but how they want to break the story of the Catholic Church keeping these priests that have abused children in the past, and them kind of unfolding who these people are and trying to talk to the victims of these events. But what I love about it too is that how a Hollywood film like this opened up that conversation of questioning your faith from hearing stuff like this. Like, it wasn't like they were removing religion from their life completely, but made them kind of rethink everything and how their faith kind of correlates with the events that are happening. And I think those are like really important conversations to have, and I love how they tackled those issues. So yeah, this was fantastic. At number 19, we have 1972's Godfather. I absolutely understand the hype with the Godfather series, at least the first two. It wasn't like I was trying to avoid this film at all costs, but it had gotten to a point where this film was being shoved down my throat that I didn't want to watch this. But once I did, I was like, okay, I understand now. I mean, it's just a terrific story of a mob family who deals with the aftermath of an attack being put on their family and how they kind of group together to fight these other families at the end. Al Pacino's character is superb, in my opinion. Like, he goes from wanting to be away from everything that's going on with the family business to being the family business towards the end, and seeing how that unfolds in his character is great. At number 18, we have 2003 Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, which this one is just so fun, even though it's like 4 hours long. I watched it as a kid, and watching it again now, like, there's nothing bad about it. Like, the spectrum of this film is just amazing. The characters, I did have issues with some characters, but then it kind of wrapped up in a bow for them where I was like, okay, I understand now. Yeah, it's just great action sequences front to back. Obviously, like, you would need to watch the first two to understand this one. Other than that, it's just, I mean, it's Lord of the Rings. You can't really say anything bad about it. At number 17, we have 1976 Rocky, which I love this series. Personally, I love Rocky 4. If you don't know the story, it's about Rocky Balboa, who wants to become, like, he's aging slightly, but he wants to become this amazing boxer, and how the current heavyweight champion plucks him from underground boxers and wants to fight him. I mean, it's a guy, you know, wanting to better himself. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I will say, watching this film, I wanted to work out after. So I think it did its purpose. At number 16, we have 2016's Moonlight, which this is the second time I'm watching it. I think I was 17 at the time. But now I'm 28 and have lived through all, like, probably the same lifespan as our main character, Chiron. So I understand it a lot better now. It felt like I was watching a personal story, like I was watching real people. You feel all the emotions with this character, and he doesn't say much, but you know exactly what he's saying at the same time. I won't say much before I get too emotional, is all I'm gonna say. At number 15, we have 1978's The Deer Hunter. This is another film where I was not expecting it to be where it is on this list. I had only known the Russian roulette scenes from this film, but now watching it, like, it made those scenes even more impactful. I will say this film, even though the first act takes a while for us to get to the war portion, because we're in a wedding for the first hour, and I don't mind it. I think it showcases who our main players are in this film in a way that shows their innocence before they get into the Vietnam War. And I will say, out of all the war films on the list, this is the one that, like, this one just felt the most real compared to the other ones. Like, I don't know what to say about that. It tugged at my heartstrings just watching this. Like, it just seemed like real war footage. So it was very heartbreaking. And seeing where these characters kind of end up after the war and where they go after that is just also very heartbreaking. I thought the final scene where they're all back together again, mourning the loss, was very impactful. At number 14, we have Gone with the Wind. That came out in 1939. This is, like, probably the first major epic. And I also am going to say Scarlett O'Hara is probably the first anti-hero, in my opinion. Like, you just love to hate her as she goes through life, taking the sheets from under people like to get what she wants is just so enthralling to me. Just watching all of this happening for like 3.5 hours. The scale of everything is just awesome. But like all the characters really put 110%. I've seen this film maybe 3 or 4 times now, and I've cried every time. So I think it deserves to be up there. At number 13, we have 1943's Casablanca. This film's just, I mean, it's another one of those movies where it's like, it's Casablanca. Like, if you haven't seen this film, I think everybody should watch this film. It's just so witty and so well written. All the characters play a significant role, even the small ones. My favorite scene, I actually grabbed the scene from it, but I'll probably play it on there.
How can you close me up? On what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Everybody out at once.
But even the end scene, like I had to write a whole like 5-page paper on the final scene, like the iconic scene. And
I think I know more about American Girls than you do. You never get
any American Girls.
If they ever made a sequel with him and the cop, they should make it Mikasa Su Casablanca. That's all I'm saying. At number 12, we have 1993's Schindler's List. This movie is just heartbreaking front to back, but going through those emotions of Herr Schindler, his kind of emotions with everything that's happening with the Holocaust. Because at first, like, you think, oh, he's just an asshole, like he just wants workers for free. But then he finally understands what's actually going on, and that's where his character really develops in a positive light to the point where he breaks down at the end. And it's always a tough watch. And this is the second time I've watched it, and I knew I was gonna break down. So yeah, it is as good as people say it is. At number 11, we have 1965's The Sound of Music. I have a personal bias to this film. I grew up watching this film. This and another film, which we'll talk about later. I pretty much know the lyrics and the dialogue front to back. So yeah, I grew up with this film, and it's so beautiful. It's just, you feel all the emotions as well with this one. Julie Andrews just is fantastic. I love her. Also, a scene with Christopher Plummer taking down the Nazi flag and tearing it with his own bare hands. All right, we're reaching the top 10, and I will say all 10 of these films, we have reached the 10 out of 10. Perfect, no notes. So let's get into it. Number 10 is Parasite, 2019. Can we watch this film again, actually? Can we watch this today? Every time I watch this film, like, I'm just like, so crazy. Yeah, I really just don't have anything else to say because the story is so complex, the characters are so complex, and how it just switches halfway through the film. Like, you think it's gonna go through this route, it's not. I love showing it to people who've never seen it before. I showed it to my mom, and she, like, at the end, she was like, okay. Yeah, I've got nothing else to say other than this film is just perfection. At number 9, we have 1946, The Best Years of Our Lives. Wow, this film, brother, I'd heard about this film, but I didn't know anything about it. Now I know. Now it's, yeah, I get it, guys. So this one, it's about 3 men who had served in World War II, and they're coming back into society, and how each one of them deal with it in a different way. Like, one of them deals with alcoholism. One of them is coming back to a life that he thought was perfect for him and kind of to take a step back from it. And the other one, which is the most heartbreaking, is he lost both of his arms during battle. But the actor who played him actually lost both of his arms from World War II. So this was his first film, I believe, that he's acted in. And he actually won an award for it. Like, he kills it. And his scenes were just so heartbreaking. Like, we were laying on the couch. You weren't even watching. Like, you were snuggling up next to me, and he was crying too. Like, it was just, yeah, it's so beautiful. Like, all the characters in this movie just play a huge part in it. And the story is just, it's great. Number 8, we have 2006, The Departed. I didn't know anything about this film. And once we got into the film, once we got into the premise of it, I was like, okay, I get it. We're locked in. So basically, long story short, Matt Damon's character works for Jack Nicholson, who is the head of this sort of mob. And Matt Damon's character, although he works for him, is trying to get into the CIA to give those secrets out to him. And then we have Leonardo DiCaprio, who is an undercover cop getting into Jack Nicholson's mob. That's all I'm going to say. It's a bunch of fucked up shit happens, and the third act is just crazy. It's almost like that SNL skit of the what you say. Number 7, we have 1962, Lawrence of Arabia. This one I didn't know anything about this film. And this one really shocked me, especially with where the story was going, especially halfway through. I thought it was gonna go one way with fighting for the Arabs, but then it becomes a certain like internal power struggle. That's where it like really took me back, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know we were gonna go through here. Yeah, I love the chemistry of Sharif and Lawrence, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Go ahead, Louis.
You love him.
No, I fear him.
Then why do you weep?
I fear him. Who love him.
Same directors, Bridge on the River Kwai, too. David Lean is too bad.
Oh yeah, and they're both awesome. Yeah, same director for Lawrence of Arabia also did Bridge on the River Kwai, and there are a couple actors that are in both films, but so yeah, he's a great director. Number 6, we have 1974's Godfather Part 2. Shockingly, this one was even better than the first one. I think more things happen in this film. Like The Godfather, the original one, like it sets up your characters, it sets up what they do. And Godfather Part 2 is Al Pacino's character being in that head role and basically fucking it up, but in a good way, if that makes sense. But also like dealing with his relationships amongst that family and how there's treason going on, there's rivalries happening. Again, I felt all the emotions of this film. It's very jam-packed with a bunch of things happening. I just saw a fly. Yeah. Also, I didn't know the scene of I knew it was you, Fredo, was from this film. And knowing the backstory of that scene is crazy. So I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it's even better than the first one. Number 5. We're getting the top 5, people. Top 5. So these are the ones in my repertoire that I would probably say are my favorite film. So number 5, we have 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This one is just so interesting, and there's so many actors in this film. Like Danny DeVito's in it. he plays a great character, by the way. Jack Nicholson's in it. I don't know the actor's name, but he plays Chief, and I love Chief. Chief is probably my favorite character, and essentially it's Jack Nicholson's character going into the insane asylum for multiple charges that he's been through, like assault and even sexual assault too, which is crazy. But kind of in that testing period of does he belong here? He also takes that leadership role amongst all the other patients, and it just goes crazy from there. At number 4, get over here. Boom. Number 4. So this was actually, for the longest time, this has been my favorite film of all time. This is this is the film I was referencing with Sound of Music, where I quote this movie on the daily probably. And like even when I was a kid, like we watched it maybe twice a year. Like I'd watch it so much. And I cry every time. Every time I watch it, I am bawling my eyes out. This movie's it just has a special place in my heart. Like Tom Hanks is great in this movie. It's one of those films again that I had a problem with in the past where like things just happen, but like it's about Forrest and how his faults kind of help him in these scenarios throughout these decades. Even though he's a fictional character, like it's just so powerful. Yeah, that last scene with the feather. No. You're gonna make me sob, man. All right, so now we're getting to the top 3, and I will say the top 3 could be, at one point, all 3 of these films have been number 1 on the list, but after thinking about it, this is where I've come to. So just know that these 3 films are essentially number 1, but we gotta put them somewhere. So at number 3, we have 1959's Ben-Hur. First time I watched it, it was in my Latin class, sophomore year of high school, and it was another one of those ones where we watched it like a week and a half, I'd say, because it's a long movie. So I didn't really connect with it the first time, but this time, man, I was literally laying in bed. I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about this damn movie the entire time and like researching it. It's about this man, Judah Ben-Hur, who is a Jewish aristocrat who is living in the Roman Empire and reconnects with his childhood friend who is now a Roman commander. I won't say anything else about it because I do feel people should watch this, but how there's treason, there's betrayal, there's like he goes through so much in this film. He like I don't even know what to say. Like this is just such a great film and so much happens, but it's not like overwhelming. Like everything flows and it all wraps up in the end. Like I'm not religious whatsoever, and this film does tackle religion in a way, but something about it, like I just adored it so much. And it's a fictional story, but how it correlates with the crucifixion of Jesus. And it's just such an interesting story. And number two, we've got Silence of the Lambs from 1991. I mean, this film is just like throughout everybody's list. I feel like it's on everyone's top 10 list. It's just perfect front to back. Again, I love a psychological thriller. We were debating it the other day if this was considered a horror film. And honestly, I thought about it. I think it is because like usually horror has like a sort of fantasy aspect of it, but what's more horror than real life, especially with this real life in this film. I think Clarice is one of the most badass women in film history. Hannibal Lecter is also just such an interesting character and such an interesting villain, and how he goes through the film just scot-free basically. But how they work together to figure out Buffalo Bill, who is the serial killer going around and trying to at least Clarice trying to figure out how to stop this man by talking to someone who had gone through that act. And again, if you haven't seen this film, you definitely should. So I won't say anything else about it. Just know that it is just fantastic and like well written, well directed, very well paced. Nothing feels dragged on. Nothing is boring about it. I would watch this movie again and again. All right, we've reached number one. And it is 2022's Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'll tell you why this one is number one. I had seen this movie a few times already, and this is one of those films where it personally affected me and how the story itself just correlates way too well with where I was when I first watched it. Like I had a quarter life crisis a few years ago and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life and wanting to live a different life, or like looking into my other lives, like past lives and stuff like that, and not really wanting to actually be present and living this current life. And I think the way that they approach this story in such an artistic way about the multiverse stories are very eye roll to me, especially in the Marvel universe. But this one took it in a way where like she had a personal struggle and correlated that struggle with the multiverse. It also deals with family dynamics, and her story with her daughter, like really, it just breaks me every time I watch it. And I sat in silence every time I've watched it. In my top 10 list, this is by far my favorite film of all time, and that is why it is number one on this list. This film is just spectacular in every sense, and I don't care if you guys think that's basic. This film is great. You guys make a list instead. So that was my list of ranking every single Best Picture winner. This took like 3 months of my life, probably. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Yeah, if this video works out, maybe I'll do the Razzies and do a ranking on those films. You guys want to see me suffer even more? We'll do that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't know, leave your top 5 in the comments if you've seen a good chunk of these films. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, subscribe. Turn on those notifications. Follow me. Peace.